The African Child, Chapter 11. Each time I went back home to spend my holidays at Korosa, I would find my hut newly decorated with white clay. My mother would be all impatience to show me the improvements which she had made in it from year to year. At first, my hut was just a hut like any other, and then, gradually, it had begun to take on a more and more Europeanized appearance. I say, had begun to, for the resemblance always remained partial, though I was very conscious of it, not merely because of the additional comfort it offered, but because it was the living proof, the tangible proof of the great love my mother felt for me. Yes, I used to pass most of the year at Conakry, but I was still her favorite son. I could see that easily, and I did not need to see it even. I knew it, but in the appearance of my heart, I could see it, as well as feel it. Well, what do you think of it? My mother would say. It's wonderful, I would reply, and I would give her a great hug. That was all the thanks my mother expected. But it was indeed wonderful, and I did not suspect how much ingenuity had gone into it, how much trouble my mother had taken in order to create, from the simplest materials, those modest equivalents of European mechanical appliances. The main article of furniture, the one which immediately caught the eye, was the divan bed. At first, it had been just like the one in her own hut, a bed like any other bed in our country, a bed made of clay bricks. Then the central bricks had been removed, leaving only two supports, one at the foot and one at the head, and planks had taken the place of the bricks. On this improvised bedstead, crude but not uncomfortable, my mother finally placed a mattress stuffed with rice straw. Thus, it became a comfortable and fairly spacious bed, big enough for 3 or even 4. But it was hardly spacious enough to accommodate all the friends, the innumerable friends, both boys and girls, who would come and visit me on certain evenings. I cannot remember just how, piled all together on the bed, we managed to find room to strum a guitar, nor yet how my friends got enough air for singing. I do not know whether my mother cared very much for these meetings, but she put up with them, comforting herself probably with the thought that at least I was in my own compound, not hanging around Lord knows where. As for my father, he thought it was quite in order. As I scarcely saw him at all during the day, busy as I was in visiting this or that friend's house, if I had not gone off on some more extensive trip, he would come and knock on my door. I would cry, "Come in," and he would enter, saying good evening to everyone, and would ask me how I had spent my day. After a few more words, he would go away. He understood, although his presence was welcome, and it really was. It was at the same time very intimidating to such a youthful and lively gathering as ours. My mother's attitude was completely different. Her heart was close to mine, and their doors faced each other. My mother had only to take a single step, and she was inside my heart. She used to do so without any warning. She never knocked at the door. She just walked straight in. Suddenly, there she would be, standing before us, without the slightest sound from the door. She would look closely at everyone before saying good evening. Oh, it was not the faces of my men friends that she scrutinized. They were my own affair. They did not matter. No, it was the girls' faces that my mother used to inspect, and she very soon picked out the faces she did not like. I must admit that in these gatherings, there were sometimes young women of rather loose habits and whose reputation was a little tarnished. But how could I forbid them to come? Did I even want to do so? If they were a little more worldly wise than was necessary, they were also generally the most amusing. But my mother thought otherwise, and she never used to beat about the bush. "You," she would say, "what are you doing here? Your place is not with my son. Go back home. If I see you here again, I'll have something to tell your mother about you. I warn you." If the girl did not make up fast enough, or if she did not extract herself quickly enough from the jumbo on the divan, my mother would pull her out by the arm and thrust her towards the open door. "Go on," she would say. "Go back home." And with her hands, she would pretend to be chasing away some too adventurous fowl. Only then would she say good evening to everyone. I did not care much for this procedure. I did not care for it at all. Reports of these insults were spread abroad, and whenever I invited a girlfriend to come and visit me, she would say as often as not, "And what if your mother catches me?" She won't eat you, no, but she'll start shouting and show me the door. And I will stand there in front of the girl, wondering, is there really any reason why my mother should turn her out of doors? And I did not always know. I used to live in Conakry for the greater part of the year, and I did not know all the details of Korosa gossip. But I could hardly say to the girl, "Have people been talking about you? And if you've had any affairs, do you think my mother knows about them?" It exasperated me. As I grew older, I became more passionate. I no longer had merely half-hearted friendships or even love affairs. I did not have only Marie or Fanta, although at first it was Marie and Fanta I had as friends. But Marie was on holiday at Bella, at her father's, and Fanta was my regular girl. I respected her, and even if I had wanted to go further, and I did not want to, custom would have forbidden it. The rest were unimportant, but they existed nevertheless. Could my mother fail to understand the growing ardor of my blood? She understood it only too well. Often she would get up in the middle of the night and come and make sure that I was alone in bed. She would generally make her rounds towards midnight, striking a match to light my bed. If I still happened to be awake, I would pretend to be asleep. Then, as if the lighted match had disturbed me, I would pretend to wake with a start. "What's the matter?" I would cry. "Are you asleep?" My mother would ask. "Yes, I was asleep. Why did you wake me up?" "Good. Go to sleep again." "But how can I sleep if you keep waking me up?" "Don't get worked up," she would say. "Go to sleep." But I did not care much for this kind of treatment, and I used to complain about it to Koyate and Chekoma, who at that time were my most intimate friends. "Am I not old enough to look after myself?" I would ask. I was considered sufficiently grown up to be given my own hut. But how can I call my hut my own if people can enter it at any hour of the day or night? "It shows that your mother loves you very much," they would answer. "You're not going to complain of that." No was all I could say. But I could not help thinking that her affection for me might have been a little less exclusive and less tyrannical. And it was obvious that Chek and Kuyate enjoyed more freedom than I was allowed. "Don't brood over it," Kuyate would say. "Play us your guitar." I would go and take down my guitar Kuyate had taught me to play. In the evening, instead of staying in my hut, we would go strolling through the streets of the town, Kuyate and I, strumming on our guitars, while Czech played the banjo, and we all three sang in harmony. Girls who often were already in bed when we passed their compound would wake up and listen to us. Though only 3 of us had started out, soon we would be 6 and 10 and sometimes even 15, all of us rousing the echoes in the sleeping streets. Kuyate and Czech had been my schoolfellows in the primary school at Korosa. They were both quick-witted and particularly gifted in mathematics. I can still remember how, when the master had barely finished dictating us a problem, they would both of them jump up and take him the finished sum. This amazing rapidity used to fill us all with wonder, but also used to fill me with discouragement, even though I always used to get my own back in French. But from that time onwards, despite, or perhaps because of this competitive spirit, we had been friends. But it was a friendship such as only very young schoolboys know, not very well founded and impermanent. Our real friendship did not begin, in fact, until after I had left our hometown to study in Conakry, and Kuyate and Czech had left to continue their studies at respectively the high schools at Popoda and Dakar. We exchanged numerous and very lengthy letters in which we used to describe our life at school and compare notes on our lessons. Then, when the holidays came, we met again in Korosa, and we soon became inseparables. At first, our parents had not looked upon our friendship with any great favor. Either we used to disappear for whole days, forgetting meal times and the meals themselves, or else we used to stay in the compound so that at meal times there would be 2 unexpected guests. Such behavior was undoubtedly a little free and easy, but this disfavor did not last long. Our parents soon realized that if we disappeared for 2 out of every 3 days, the 2 guests would put in an appearance only on every 3rd day, and they soon accepted the very fair and judicious rotation we had put into practice without consulting them. "But couldn't you have told me?" my mother used to say. "Couldn't you have given me notice so that I could have prepared something special?" "No," I would reply. Our sole wish was precisely that no one should make any special preparations for us. All we wanted was the usual daily meal. In the summer holidays, which came at the end of Kuyate's and Czech's 3rd scholastic year, and at the end of my 2nd year, since I had lost a year in hospital, I saw my 2 friends again. They had gained their teaching certificates and were waiting to be given posts. If their success did not surprise me, if it corresponded with everything I expected of them, nonetheless, it gave me great pleasure, and I congratulated them warmly. When I asked after their health, Czech replied that he felt very worn out. "I worked hard," he told me, "and just at the moment, I have not quite got over it. I'm worn out." But was he merely worn out? He looked ill, and his face was drawn. A few days later, I took advantage of being alone with Kuyate a moment to ask him if he thought it was simply overwork. "No," Kuyate told me. "Czech is sick. He has no appetite and he is losing weight. Besides, his stomach is swelling." Should we not warn him? I don't know, said Kuyate. I think he's noticed it himself. Isn't he doing anything for it? I don't think so. He is in no pain and perhaps he thinks it will gradually get better. And if it gets worse, we did not know what to do. We did not want to frighten Czech, and yet we felt that something should really be done about it. I'll speak to my mother about it, I said. But as soon as I began to talk to her about him, she stopped me. Czech Oma is seriously ill, she said. I've been watching him for several days. I really think I should go and warn his mother. Yes, do, I said, because he's doing nothing about it. Czech's mother did what was always done in the circumstances. She consulted the medicine men. They prescribed massage and infusions. But these remedies had scarcely any effect. His stomach continued to swell, and his face looked gray. Czech was not alarmed. I'm not in any pain, he said. I haven't much appetite, but I don't feel any pain. It will probably go as quickly as it came. I don't know whether Czech had very great confidence in the medicine men. I rather think he had very little. We had by now spent too many years at school to have complete faith in them. Yet our medicine men are not charlatans. Many of them have great knowledge and can perform real cures. And certainly Czech was aware of that. But he must have realized that this time their remedies were not working. And that is why he said, it will probably go as quickly as it came, putting more faith in the passage of time than in massage and infusions. His words cheered us up for a few days. Then, with brutal suddenness, they lost their comforting quality, for Czech really began to suffer. He now had violent attacks of pain, and he used to weep in agony. Look, Koyate told him, the medicine men have been no use to you. Come with us to the dispensary. We went there. The doctor sounded Czech and sent him into hospital. He did not say what was wrong with him, but now we knew that it was a serious illness, and Czech too knew it. Would the white doctor succeed where our old medicine men had failed? Evil is not always overcome by good, and we were filled with anxiety. We kept watch in relays at Czech's bedside. We would watch our poor friend writhing on his bed. His stomach, swollen and hard, was cold, like something already dead. Whenever the attacks grew worse, we would run distractedly to the doctor. Doctor, come quickly. But no medicine was of any use, and all we could do was to take Czech's hand in ours and press them hard so that he would not feel all alone in his pain, and say to him, there, Czech, there, be brave, it will pass. All week we stayed at his bedside. His mother, his brothers, my mother, and the mother of Kuyate. Then, towards the end of the week, Czech suddenly ceased to suffer, and we told the others to go and rest. Czech was now sleeping peacefully, and we did not dare to awaken him. We watched him sleeping, and a great hope began to spring in our hearts. His face had grown so thin that all the bones stood out, but his features were no longer drawn, and his lips seemed to be smiling. Then gradually the pain came back. The lips ceased to smile, and Czech woke up. He began by dictating to us his last wishes. He told us how we should share out his books and to whom we should give his banjo. His voice was now getting fainter and fainter. and we could not always catch the end of his words. Then he said goodbye to us once again. When he stopped speaking, it was not far off midnight. Then, as the dispensary clock finished the 12 strokes, he died. I feel as if I were living through those days and nights again, and I do not believe I have ever spent more wretched ones. I wandered aimlessly here and there. We both, Kuyate and myself, wander around as if we had lost our wits, our thoughts full of check. To have lived so many happy days, and then for everything to be over. Check, I kept saying to myself. We both kept saying it to ourselves. And we had to restrain ourselves from saying his name out loud. But his shade alone accompanied us. And when we managed to get things a little clearer in our minds, and we could not see things too clearly, we saw him in the center of his compound, laid out on a bier, laid out under his winding sheet, ready to be laid in the earth. Or it was in the earth itself, laid out at the bottom of his grave, his head raised a little, waiting for the covering of planks to be placed over him, then the leaves, the great mounds of leaves, and finally the earth itself, so dark and so heavy. Check. But I could not say his name aloud. You must never lift up your voice to address the dead. And yet, at night, it was almost as if I had lifted up my voice to speak with the dead. Suddenly, he would be standing before me, and I would wake up, my body bathed in sweat. I would be seized with fear, for if we loved Czech's ghostly shade, if his shade was all that was left to us, we feared it almost as much as we loved it, and we no longer dared sleep alone. We no longer dared to face our dreams alone. Whenever I think today of those distant times, I hardly know just what it was I was so frightened of. But that is probably because I no longer look upon death as I used to. I look upon it much more simply. I think of those past days, and now, quite simply, I think that Czech has gone before us along God's highway, and that all of us will one day walk along that highway, which is no more frightening than the other. The other? Yes, the other. The highway of life, the one we set foot on when we are born, and which is only the highway of our momentary exile. Thanks for listening. Look forward to chapter 12 in the next video. Please do not hesitate to make your comments and to subscribe to our YouTube channel.